Here you go.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Got it. We're on the sixth line on Gimel and Aleph. Below. Is it true that when it comes to Meleches Shavias, and this is Shemitah year, so this is very much in Yana Diyoma, is it true that you're only chayev for the malachos that are listed explicitly in the Torah, when it says, for example, sadcha lo sizra v'chamecha lo sizmor, and not for things like watering seeds, which is not strictly included within Zoreh. Zoreh is putting in the seeds. So we were just talking about watering the seeds, and we said, well, only that which is explicitly listed in the Torah you chayev for, not anything else. Although, is that true? But Tanya, we have a brisa that says, sadcha lo sizra v'chamecha lo sizmor. Doesn't say lo sizra sadcha, lo sizmor kamecha. The Torah has kind of an unusual lashon. Sadcha lo sizra v'chamecha lo sizmor. Sounds like whatever relates to your field, don't do it. Whatever relates to your vineyard, don't do it. Ein li ela ziru or zimor. So planting seeds, I know is obviously aser, and it says lo sizmor, so you can't do pruning. You're going to take off you're going to cut off the dry branches from the vine in order to enable the rest of the vine to grow more nicely. Minayin the nichush uleido the kisuach. How do we know that it's aser to do weeding? Weeding would be that you're going to cut away some of the weeds, obviously, to enable better by uprooting. The idor is that you're going to do hoeing. You're going to dig a little bit underneath the vines in order to soften the earth. The kisuach, you're going to, it's another form of weeding, except instead of uprooting the weeds, you're just sort of cutting the upper portion. How do we know you can't do any of those things? Talmud Lomer, sadcha lo, kamecha lo. That it's not just the things that are listed, but no, don't do any of these things. Lo kol malacha shebesadcha. Don't do any malacha in your field. Lo kol malacha shebekamecha. Don't do any malacha in your vineyard. Minayin she'ein. How do we know when it comes to the trees? She'ein mekarsamin, that you can't trim the dry branches, which is a form of pruning of a tree that is akin, it says Rashi, to the pruning, the zimor that you would do for a vine. Vein mizardin, and you don't trim the excess branches, different faskin. And if you have a tree with which is very, very supple, that you don't prop up the branches. Beilon sadcha Talmud Lomer sadcha lo, same idea. You can't do any of these things in your field. Kamecha lo, lo kol malacha shebesadcha, lo kol malacha shebekamecha. Minayin she'ein mizablin. How do we know that you can't put a lot of fertilizer next to the roots to enable its growth? Ve'ein mefarkin, and you don't remove the stones from the roots, which are impeding the growth of the tree. Ve'ein ma'avkin, and you don't apply dust to go on top of the roots, because if you have, let's say, the roots are exposed, so you want to cover them up with dust. Ve'ein ma'ashnin be'ilan, and that you don't fumigate underneath the tree in order to cause the worms to fall off. Talmud Omer sadcha lo kamecha lo, because the Torah says that the formulation of the Isser is that the field don't do it, the vineyard don't do it. Kol malacha shebesadcha lo, any malacha with your field don't do. V'chol malacha shebekamecha lo. Okay, so we're including lots and lots of Isurim. Sounds like on a Daraisa level, we're including lots and lots of Isurim that are not explicitly stated in the text. So Yachol lo yakashkesh tachas azeisim. I might think that you shouldn't hoe underneath the olives. We mentioned underneath the vineyards, you're not supposed to do it, but I might think you can't do it underneath olive trees. No, that's a different story. Below yeder tachas gefanim. You shouldn't hoe underneath the vineyards. Yeah, we just said you're not allowed to hoe underneath the vineyards. So why are we saying now it might be okay? So I think Rashi distinguishes. He says, well, it depends what you've done it before. it's not a big deal to do again. If you've never done it before, that's when it's also somebody showed him delete this line altogether. Below Yamale, Nakai Mayim, and you shouldn't fill up the cavities with which are underneath the trees with water. I might think you can't do that either. And these are considered to be less rigorous types of avoda. Lo yase ugios legefarim. I might think that you shouldn't make ditches. You shouldn't create ditches around the vines. Lo yamali nekaim. Yeah, okay. So the lo yamali in the kaimaya means that you're filling up the cavities with water. Below yasugios the gefanim. You shouldn't make ditches around the gefanim. Tamalama, no, that you could do. Sadcha los raw. It says that you shouldn't. That's why we do have an explicit mention of something. Why does it not just say sadcha lo? It says sadcha lo sizra to teach you only malachos that are similar to zriya, similar to planting seeds or asa. Zriya b'klal haisa. Zriya would have been included in all the malachos that are implied by the text. So it is explicitly mentioned in order to create an analogy. Only those things that are like zriya. Planting seeds is something you would do both in a grain field and in a vineyard. Of course, all these other activities too are things that in some fashion or another you would do both in a grain field and in a vineyard. Rashi Tosfos says, well, yeah, even though there are many of them that we don't do in grain fields nowadays, that at least where they were, they somehow found a place for all of these activities, even in a sada. Okay, so it seems anyway from the first three sections of this brisa that we include lots and lots and lots of avodos in what is prohibited midaraisa, even though they're not explicitly stated in the text. So the Gemara answers, nah, that's only midrabanan. All of those different things, ma'afkin, ma'ashnin, mefarkin, mizablin, mekarsimin, all of these things are only rabbinically prohibited across Machta B'Alma, and we're just attaching this prohibition to the text as an asmachta to show that you could derive it from the wording of sadchalo and kamechalo, but they're not really yasam midaraisa. Fine. The kishkush b'shviyas mishari says that we're allowed then to engage in kishkush. Certainly, we said with respect to hoeing underneath the olive trees. Is that really true? The haks even according to the brisa, it says that's permitted. The haksiv ashviyas tishbetenu netashta. The pasuk in Parshas Bahar says that you have to completely stop all kinds of work. Tishmetena, unetashta tishmetena midakash. Hold on. Thank you for that. You're right. It's not in Bahar. I apologize. It's in Mishpatim. Okay. I appreciate the correction. Thank you. It's true because in Bahar, I don't think we have the Lashon of Shemitah Bichlal. I was just testing. Tishmetena with a kashkesh. That you should eradicate any kind of hoeing whatsoever with a tashta milasakel, and you should also spurn it from milasakel, from clearing any rocks. So we see milakashkesh is implied directly from a prohibition which is mentioned in the text in terms of mitzvahs essay anyway. So Amar Bukva Bachama Trei Kishkush Yehavu. So there were two different types of kishkush. There's one type that's also one type that's mutter. If you're making the tree healthier, so it's going to be stronger for the future, so that's prohibited. That's a general rule in Shemitah. The things that are going to make things healthier are prohibited. Things that are going to prevent a loss, prevent the tree from dying, that's permitted. If it's going to make it healthier, so that's prohibited. But if it's a question of just the covering up the cracks in the roots in order that it's going to be able to survive, that's a different story. But Shari, that's going to be permissible. Why? Rashi gives you the general principle, the Isbei Mishum Kseda, because otherwise you're going to suffer a loss. You're not obligated to suffer a loss. Itmar, Hacharish B'Shviyas. So now let's talk about plowing. It doesn't say anything in the text about plowing. It says, Sadkodo Sizra, you're not allowed to plant seeds, but what about plowing? Is that also midaraisa on the Shemitah year or not? So Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Elazar, we have a machlokes whether you get malchus for that. One seems to hold that it's covered by the Torah prohibition, you get malchus, and the other one says you don't get malchus. That's how we hold. So Leiman bid Rabbi Yavin am Rabbi Eloi can be polgi. So it could be they're arguing about the principle of Rabbi Yavin am Rabbi Eloi. What is that? The Am Rabbi Yavin am Rabbi Eloi. Normally we have a principle, klal prat to klal, that the klal prat to klal, we follow everything that's going to be not only in the prat, but it's ke'ena prat is going to be usher. So do we say that when the klal is in sort of a different category than the prat? The klal is a mitzvah essay, and the prat is a lo saseh. Here we have, and this is in Parshas Bahar. That's a klal. And that is a mitzvah essay. And then it's followed by Sadcha Lo Sizra, the Chamacha Lo Sizmor, which is a prat, because it specifies a certain malachos. And that, of course, is a lo saseh. So do we say that that's treated like a regular klal of prat, so that when I have afterwards shnasa shabason, which is an essay that comes afterwards, so that would be a klal of prat to klal iyatadan elakain haprat, that we're going to include everything which is similar to the prat or not. So Rabbi Yavin Mamri Law has a principle. No, I don't say that if the klal is an essay and the prat is a lo saseh, ain't done and also the klal uprat uklal. Look at Tosas over here. Tosas says it brings a different girsa from the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi says that the principle of Rabbi Yavin is not talking about a klal afterwards. Here, the klal afterwards is way afterwards. Maybe it doesn't count altogether. And the principle of Rabbi Yavin is that I'm not done with klal uprat. Then normally I would just say, oh, I only prohibit that which is in the prat. But here I would say, no, I prohibit even everything that's in the klal. Okay, but we'll go with our girsa. So ain't done in also b'klal prat to klal. So the opinion that says that you get malchus, leislei the Rabbi Yavin, doesn't hold like Rabbi Yavin, and therefore holds that I do follow the principles of klal prat to klal, and anything which is similar to the prat. Choresh is certainly similar to the prat. It helps the planting process. That would be usher as well. So leis like the Rabbi Yavin and Rabbi Eloi. And the one who says that you don't get malchus is like the Rabbi Yavin. Holds like Rabbi Yavin, Amar Rabbi Eloi. That namely in this particular case, I would not follow a klal prat to klal, but rather I would follow klal prat. And therefore you wouldn't get malchus for a choresh. Okay, low. So we say that's not true. The kuliyama leisle the Rabbi Yavin Rabbi Eloi. Nobody holds by the principle of Rabbi Yavin Rabbi Eloi. If it was only based on that principle, we would his shita we would follow a klal prat to klal, and we would be done ke'ein haprat. So nobody holds by Rabbi Yavin Rabbi Eloi. Mandam aloke shapir. The one who says that you get malchus, so we understand he gets malchus because we have a klal prat to klal situation, and we're done ke'ein prat, and choresh is included. Umanda me'eno loke, and the one who says that you don't get malchus, amalach, gives you the following argument. He says, well, listen, miftei zmira b'chlal zriya, that we already zmira is automatically included within Zriya. When we talk about pruning, so that's part of the sowing process. I didn't need the Torah to say Sadcha lo Sizra, B'chamacha lo Sizmor. I didn't need both of them. With Sira B'chlal Ketzira, I'm going to cut off grapes from the grapevine. That's included within reaping. That's understood. So I didn't need to have the double lashon of Sefiach Ketzircha lo Siktzor V'Invein Zirecha lo Sibtzor. I didn't need both. Why does the Torah have both? That only on these types of todos that relate to the Ab Malacha are you chayev, but anything else which is not explicitly stated in the text that relates to reaping or relates to sowing, you're not going to be chayev for. Charisha clearly relates to sowing and would be viewed as like a tolada, at least for purposes of Hilchos Shavias. But it's not explicitly recorded, therefore you're not going to be chayev. Below, is that true? The Hatanya, now we have the brisa that we stated before, so we already translated everything in this brisa. We're just going to read it. I might think that only sowing. I might think that only sowing and zimor and pruning is going to be usher. Minayin leidor How do I know that the hoeing of the kishkush and kishkush is also going to be also with the kisuach of the weeding and hoeing and kisuach and weeding by cutting? So also tamlo masadka lo chamecha lo komalacha shebesadka lo komalacha shebekamacha. Minayin shem mekarsimin. And how do I know that you can't go and trim the dry branches? Ve'em mizardin, trim the excess branches. Ve'em mefaskin, and prop up the tree that's supple. Ve'ilan tamad lo masadka lo kamacha lo komalacha sadka lo kamacha lo komalacha shebesadka lo komalacha shebekamacha lo. Minayin shem mizavlin. How do I know that I can't fertilize the roots? Ve'em mefarkin, and I can't remove the stones. Ve'em mahashnin, and I be'ilan, and I can't fumigate the ilan. Tamad loma sadka lo kamacha lo komalacha shebesadka lo v'komalacha shebekamacha lo. Yachalo yikashkesh tachas zaysim. I might think you can't hold under the others. So yeder tachas kefarim. Maybe you go not, even if they were previously held. Lo yamali nekayim mayim, and you can't fill up the cavities and the crevices with water. Lo yasugios the kefarim. You can't dig ditches around the vines. Tamad loma that. That's okay. Sadka lo sizra. Zriya v'klahaysa l'mayasa l'kashi l'hakish l'el l'malacham azriya miyucheres avodah shebesada v'shebekera kosh avishi avodah shebesada v'shebekera, and these things are not considered for whatever reason avodah shebesada v'shebekera. But we see that even things that are not explicitly listed in the text, all of those lots and lots of talados are included. So we give the same answer that we gave before for this shita that says you don't get malchus for a choresh, or that all of that and this that's recorded in the Bryce telling me Rabbanan Kvar Smach to be Alma. Next page, Gimel Amud Beis.
I have a question.
Sure.
We're talking about cloud and cloud, and I understand that first he gives the cloud,
Yeah.
and then there's the prat of the Tizra of the Tizmor. Where's the second cloud?
Second cloud, according to Rashi, is in the pasuk of Shanas Shabbason, Yellow Aretz. You open up a chumash, I'll try to find it for you. Okay. And the first cloud is Shabbat Shabbason. Right, and then you have it's in Bahar Paraklof Hey in Vayikra. Okay, and then you have after Shabbat Shabbason Yellow Aretz, you have Sadchalos Ismor V'Chamachalos Ismor. It's at the end, the very end. And then after the words that's in Vela in Niziracha Lo Sitzur, it says again Shna Shabbason Yela Aretz. Okay, so it's like it's at the end of the next pasuk. In the first pasuk it says Shabbat Shabbason Yela Aretz. Then it says Sadchalos Yiswa Mechamachalos Yismor. Then at the end of the next pasuk, which is a little bit merucha according to Tosfos, it says Shna Shabbason Yela Aretz. That's the second cloud. Okay, beginning of Gimel Amud Beis. Ki Asa Rabdimi. Avdimi came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel. Okay, Amar Yacho Yokel Tosefis. We might get Malchus for the extra stuff. But Nasiv La Tamud the Petura. But we have a limud that Chazal came up with that shows you that you're really potter. V'lo yadana my Tamuda, and we didn't know what he meant when Avdimi said this. So what's the Tamuda? How do we derive that you're potter? My Tosefis, and what was he talking about in the first place? When he said, I might think you get Malchus for the extra stuff. What extra stuff? So the two different opinions what he's talking about. Rabbi Elazar Amar, Charisha. He was talking about Charisha with this case that we've been discussing. I might think you get Malchus for doing Choresh for plowing on the Shemitah year. Because that would come from this klal prat to klal, because itadon ela ke'ena prat, and this is ke'ena prat. And then the Talmud, we derive from the Talmud that it's pater for the reasons that we said. If you're going to be chayev, then why do we have all of these cases of lo sizmor and lo siftzor? The fact that these cases are spelled out teaches me only for these cases you get Malchus and not for other tolados. Rabbi Yochanan says Tosefis is kamashmo. The Tosefis, Yaakov, wake up. These are the days that the Chachamim added, okay, that you're not allowed to do your work in your field. Lifnei Rosh Hashanah, and this is what they're saying. I might think that you'll get Malchus for the plowing, for at least the Zriya, the sowing that you're going to do before Rosh Hashanah, the Asya, which is something that we derive from Becharish Ubekatzir Tishbos, that even for plowing, actually, because it goes together with reaping in the pasuk, and we're going to see later on in some machlokes, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Yishmael, how we darshan this pasuk. But Nasiv la Tamuda the Petura, and and we have a limud to teach me that your patur could be in lememela kamon, like we're coming attractions, like we're going to explain later on. Okay, so my yom mishlifnei Rosh Hashanah. What are these days before Rosh Hashanah, before the Shemitah even begins, that we say that there is a prohibition, and yet, Rav Dimi pointed out you don't get malchus for violating this prohibition. Kedetanan, the Mishnah says, "An masai chorshin b'sadi ilon erev shvius." Until when are you allowed to plow the field? If you have a field of trees on erev shvius, so you have a machlokus. Beishamai kozman shia for the pre. Beishamai says, as long as the charisha is good for the fruits of the 6th year, which is going to be close to Atzeres, says Rashi, close to Shavuos time. But afterwards, it's clear that you're just plowing and preparing the field for the Shemitah year, then it's going to be awesome. Beis Hillel says, Ada Atzeres. Beis Hillel says, up until Shavuos itself. They'll give you a little bit more leeway, a little bit more leniency. You can continue to plow up until Shavuos. The Korovin, the truth of the matter is, it's really pretty much the same thing. Maybe with Beis Shammai, you got to stop a couple of days earlier, but it's really the same thing. The Korovin, Divrei Elu, Liyosef, K'Divrei Elu. V'ad Masai Chorshin, stay a Lovan, Erev Shvius. Let's say it's a field not of trees, but a field of grain, a stay a Lovan. So up until when are you allowed to plow that on the Erev Shvius? Mishatikla Halacha, until the ground moisture ceases. Meaning that you have the general moisture, you can get a benefit out of, so that it's still considered to be appropriate to plow in order to plant mikshos, squash, midlos, and gourd, pumpkin. So that's sort of your yardstick, your barometer as to when the ground is still moist enough that it would make sense to plow during the Shemitah year, during the 6th year, for the 6th year, when the plowing would not be considered for the purpose of the Shemitah year that comes afterwards. So Rabbi Shimon says, you're going to distinguish between the grain fields and the orchards of trees. It's going to be too confusing. It's going to be, as Rashi says, a violation of the principle of Nasata Drarecha the Shiurin, that the measurement is not going to be consistent. You need to have a consistent measurement. Ella, rather, what? Stay alavon out of Pesach. Or not only that, but not in terms of the distinction between the grain field and the orchard, but the distinction between when different people are going to plant their squash and their pumpkins. Rather, we just have a general principle, forget the squash and the pumpkins. B'stei alavon, if it's a grain field, you can continue to plow until Pesach time. Out of Pesach time makes sense for the 6th year purpose. B'stei ilan, if it's an orchard of trees, out of Atzeres, you can continue to plow up until Shavuos. Was there a question?
So
No, I'm just saying it depends on the rain.
Why? It could depend.
It depends on the rain. The more rain-
Right. It could depend on the rate. Yeah. Well, Rashi says like this: sometimes some people will plant before the other person when it comes to when they decide to plant their squash. The Amar Rabbi Shimon ben
so the Tosefes Shvius starts all the way from Shavuos.
it starts all the way from Shavuos, even from Pesach, with respect to the stay 11, believe it or not, even from Pesach. Okay. The Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi, Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Mishum Bar Kapara. And don't worry, Eddie, because Rabbi Gamliel and his Bezdin came along and they said, come on, what are you talking about? We got to stop doing this work all the way from Pesach, all the way from Shavuos? No way. We're doing away with this takana, okay? Modern Orthodoxy. Rabbi Gamliel, the Bezdin said, from now on, you can keep on going until afterwards. So Amalei, Rabbi Zera, Rabbi Yavo, Amila, Reish Lakish, Rabbi Yochanan, wait a second. What's going on over here? Since when do we get to do that in Orthodox Judaism? That you just do away with the takana, the Beis Shammai or Beis Hillel, with Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel had established these times. They have to stop plowing for the grain field after Pesach, for the orchards after Shavuos, or approximately Shavuos, quite to Beis Shammai. How can they do away with it? The Hatzanan, And the Mishnah say, "Ein bezdin yochel avato divrei bezdin chaver olim ken gadol mimenu b'chokma v'minyan." I mean, not to take anything away from Amman Gamliel, but we're talking about Hillel Shammai. You're talking about, the greatest Bati Din of all time. We can't just do away with their takanos. So Ishtomim, whoever got this question, either Rabbi Yavo or Rabbi Yochanan, Ishtomim kashachada, they hesitated for a moment. Amalei, Amor, they got to say like this. Sometimes if the nature of the takana was that they built into the takana that a future bezdin would be able to revoke it if they felt that there was a need, so then it would be permissible even if the second bezdin is not greater. So this was probably built into the original takana. Included in the text of the original takana was that anybody who wants to be mevatel it because there's a good reason, it can come along and be mevatel it. So ditui. So wait a second. Was it really something that Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai came up with? This idea of Tosefes Shvius, isn't it a halakha Moshe Misinai? If it was a takana, so we understand maybe it was built into the takana, could be revoked later on. But it's halakha Moshe Misinai. The law of Esenetios, which is really the law of Tosefes Shvius, that it says that if you have a field of base of 50 by 50 amos, that you can plow the entire field up until Rosh Hashanah. If you have these Esenetias, you have 10 saplings that are planted throughout the field. But otherwise, if I have mature trees, you're not allowed to plow up until Rosh Hashanah. You have to stop earlier. We see that's a halakha Moshe Misinai. Similarly, a rava, that we go around the Mizbeach with the Arava, that's also halakha Moshe Misinai. That we do water libations and sukkahs, it's halakha Moshe Misinai. So how could you just be mevatel halakha Moshe Misinai? So Amar Yitzchak Kikimimi Hilchasa Shloshim Yom Pnei Rosh Hashanah. No, the halakha Moshe Misinai only starts Chodesh Elul, Rosh Chodesh Elul. 30 days before Rosh Hashanah, you have to stop your plowing. That's the halakha Moshe Misinai. The takana Vasuhani, the takana Beis Shammai Beis Hillel was Tikkum Pesach and Mein Seres. Remember, they said that you're not allowed to do the charisha already from Pesach for a wheat field and not seres for an orchard. And they said for that added extension of Tosefes, that's something that a future bezdin can be mevatel. So that's what Rabbi Gamliel was mevatel. He said up until 30 days before Rosh Hashanah, that for sure you can't do. But to go all the way back to Shavuos or Pesach, so that you don't have to be machmir about. They instituted that within the Tosefes Shvius, that you could have a longer period of time to plow before it's going to be usher. But in terms of the halakha Moshe Misinai, that for 30 days before, and if it's not a sapling, not a field or saplings, you're not allowed to plow. So that they did not do away with. But wait a second. Since when is it even a halakha Moshe Misinai? It's derived explicitly from psukim. It's a derived from psukim, the idea of Tosefes Shvius. Karaininu. It's from the psukim, because what do we have? It says explicitly the Tanya, Becharish uvakatzir tishbos. We have a pasuk that says Becharish uvakatzir tishbos, which is, I believe, also a pasuk in Mishpatim. Rabbi Akiva Omer, Ein Sarach Lomer, that you have to stop your work when it comes to plowing and when it comes to reaping. So wait a second. It can't be. It's true that the Torah doesn't otherwise speak explicitly about plowing, but let's focus on the reaping. Rabbi Akiva Omer, Ein Sarach Lomer Charish v'katzir shel Shvius. It doesn't have to mention the reaping with respect to the Shvius. So the Charish here is just tagging along. Sharei Kvar Nemar, because it already says Sadcha lo Sizra v'chamecha lo Sizmor. It already tells us that in the psukim and the continuation of the psukim anyway, that you're not allowed to engage in reaping, because it says in the continuation of the pasuk. And the Charish shel erev Shvius, rather what we're talking about over here is that we're adding on to the prohibitions of Shvius itself. Charish shel erev Shvius sheniknas of the Shvius, that the plowing, even on the year before the Shemitah year, the 6th year, is going to be prohibited. We see that this is prohibited according to the pasuk, that you have to stop plowing a certain period before the Shemitah year. Because of Shvius, you're not allowed to do reaping of a Shemitah produce that grew during the Shemitah year and is only ready to be harvested in the year of following Shvius, the 8th year. Rabbi Shmuel, however, learns that the pasuk has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with the Shemitah. So the kasha is only according to the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yishmael says, Macharish Rishus, Avkotzer Rishus. That just like Chorish is considered is never something which is obligated, okay? Like even for the Korban HaOmer, if you already had the field that was plowed, not for the purpose of the Omer to grow, then you don't have to plow it specifically for that purpose. Av Katsir Rishus. So too, when we prohibit Katsir, we prohibit reaping on Shabbos. It's only if it's a permissible, if it's only a Katsir that's not obligatory. But sometimes Katsir is obligatory because when it comes to the Korban Omer, if you found the Omer that was already cut, there's a halacha that you're obligated to specifically cut your sheaves of barley specifically for the purpose of the Korban Omer. So Yatsa Katsir Omer Shim Mitzvah. So therefore, if that's something that you hadn't done yet, and now it's going to be the second day of Pesach, the second night of Pesach, and you have to cut the Korban Omer, and it happens to be a Shabbos, we say it's okay. This overrides Shabbos because this is not an optional type of reaping. This is a mandatory type of meat reaping that was never prohibited by the Torah. So that's what we learn from the combination, from the comparison of Chorish v'Katzir, B'Chorish v'Katzir Tishbos. It's a special law relating to Hilchos Shabbos. I'm sorry, you had a question? Okay, fine. Okay, excellent. So Ella Amarav Nachman.
No. Keep going. Ask him with the 2 dots.
Okay.
Ella Amarav Nachman by Yitzchak Gimiri Hilchasa the Mishri Yolada that we need both. We need both the Halacha L'Moshe Misinai and we need the Pasuk. We need the Halacha L'Moshe Misinai to teach me that it is okay to plow for the purpose of saplings. If you have a field of 10 saplings, and cry, and I need the pasuk L'Mesa Zakena to teach me that you're not allowed to plow before the Shemitah year when it comes to a Zakena, a mature tree. So says the Gemara logically, wait a second. If I have one thing which is spelled out, that clearly implies the other thing. The cave of the Hilchos of the Mishri Yolda. Once I have a Lach L'Moshe Misinai that says, oh, if it's a sapling, a field of saplings, so yeah, then you're allowed to plow into Rosh Hashanah. Well, Memela, that teaches me that if it's not saplings, it would be also. La Memela Zakena Asira. So therefore, I don't need both. If we have a logical brain, then one is sufficient. If you don't have a logical brain, then even 2 won't be enough. Ela Hilchasa Rabbi Yishmael. Rather, I need the Halacha L'Moshe Misinai for Rabbi Yishmael, because Rabbi Yishmael did not derive any laws of Tosefes Shvius from the pasuk B'Chorish v'Katzir Tishbos. He learned that it related to Hilchos Shabbos. Cry Rabbi Akiva, and the pasuk is for Rabbi Akiva, who derives from the pasukim themselves, and he doesn't need the Halacha L'Moshe Misinai. Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Gamliel of Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yochanan gives a different explanation as to how it is that Rabbi Gamliel was able to do what he did. He said, Rabbi Gamliel Ve'Zdino Midaraisa Batalu. Said it doesn't matter if the law of Tosefes Shvius was on a Daraisa level, he got rid of it even if it wasn't on Daraisa level, even if it wasn't just a Takana. Wow, that's pretty powerful. How do you do that? My time Gomer Shabbos Mishabbos Bereshis. He derived from the Gzeira Shava of Shabbos from Shabbos Bereshis that it says Kivos Shabbos Mikom Malachto with respect to Shabbos Bereshis, and it says Shabbos Shabboson Yeh La'aretz with respect to Shemitah. We have a Gezeira Shava. He enacted his own Gezeira Shava from Shabbos Bereshis. He said, hey, look, Malal and he asur lefanei acharei mutar. When it comes to Shabbos Bereshis, what's asur? Is Friday asur? No. You got to work to the last second on Friday to prepare for Shabbos sometimes, right? Especially if it's a short Shabbos. He has the fanel, the acharei mutar, and you get up to Mosei Shabbos. Not everybody waits the 72 minutes. Hey, Shabbos is over. Let's go. Afkan, he asur. So too when it comes to Shemitah. Shemitah's asur. The fanel acharei mutar. Before Shemitah and after Shemitah is mutar. So therefore, you can't add on this concept of Tosefes Shvius because it's explicit in the Torah. It's mutar. So maski v'vashim andam hilchasa. Wait a second. If you say it's Halacha L'Moshe Misinai, how can Rabbi Gamliel invent? You're not allowed to invent your own Zeira Shava. How can Rabbi Gamliel invent his own Zeira Shava to do away with Halacha L'Moshe Misinai? This sounds like the conservative Judaism. Asik Zeira Shava, Akra Hilchasa, Umandam Akra, and if it's an actual pasuk in the Torah, Asik Zeira Shava, Rabbi Gamliel can come up with his own Zeira Shava and Akra Kra, and he could just uproot a pasuk in the Torah. No way. Elam Ravashi Rabban Gamliel Beis Dino started like Rabbi Yishmael Dam Hilchasa. Really, they hold like Rabbi Yishmael that you don't derive it from the Psukim, the Pasuk, the Charish or Kasset Tishbos deals with Hilchas Shabbos. They learned there was halacha on Moshe Sinai. But what's the nature of the halacha on Moshe Sinai? The Hilchasa Gemiri law. The Gemiri Hilchasa, the halacha is like Nisuk Hamayim that was right next to it. Nisuk Hamayim is only required when the Beis Hamikdash is around. So too, Rabban Gamliel derived that Tosefes Shvius is only applicable when the Beis Hamikdash is around. Bisman shebeis hamikdash kayim dumya denisuk hamayim. Bisman she'ein beis hamikdash kayim. When there's no beis hamikdash, there's no tosefes shvius lo. Okay, continuation. No, okay.
My question.
We only have 20 minutes.
With
Okay,
regard to
just saying.
the Korban Omer during Shvius, where do you get the barley from if you can't plant the barley?
It's a good question. Maybe matzah menutak. Or
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, or maybe it was just Osa Bezdin. Yeah.
Real quickly, so we have this long mahalach here on Harisha. So what's
Yeah.
what's the machlokas is still, do we have a raya for one side and the other at the end?
In the end, we just have a machlokas. Whether you get
Still
malchus,
saying
whether
machlokas.
it remains a machlokas to the end, whether you get malchus for choresh, whether you don't get malchus for choresh. And it boils down to, does it need to be explicit in the pasuk, or
Right.
even if it's not explicit in the pasuk?
Okay.
Okay. So bishlama meikilo nika tircha yisera. So I'm sorry, v'lo meisham v'lo me'akilon. We said that what you're not allowed to do. We're talking about chol hamoed, shmita. You're not allowed to take water the fields that require irrigation, right? The base of shlochin. You're not allowed to, even though it's necessary to prevent loss, you're not allowed to engage in excessive exertion. Excessive exertion would be if you took it from a pool of rainwater, mega shamim, or you took from me'akilon, you took from a well. So that's something that would not be permitted. That's what the Mishnah says, right? That's what the Mishnah says. So bishlama me'akilon ikatircha yasera. So I understand, and certainly this is true with respect to Chol HaMoed, where we have this notion of you can't do tircha yaseva. It could be we don't have that notion when it comes to Shemitah. It's a different story. But certainly with Chol HaMoed. So Bishlama Meikino Nika Tircha Yaseva, we understand you got to go all the way down in the ditch. You know, that's that takes a lot of exertion. And the Mega Shavim, I just have a pool of rainwater. What's the big deal? My tircha. Some Rabbi Elam, Rabbi Yochanan, Gezer Mega Shavim to make Elam. I don't allow the rainwater case because I'm afraid you're going to go all the way down to the well. You're going to go all the way down to the Meikilon. So Abashi Amar Megishaman Gufaili de Meikilon Asu. Abashi says the Megishaman itself is the problem because the more that you take from the pool of rainwater, the more you're going to deplete it, and then you're going to have to lower yourself further and further down over time. Whether I have to worry about something else or whether it's only an internal fear is really the same. It depends on whether you hold like Rabbi Zera. If I have streams that draw water from ponds, okay, with rainwater, and these ponds have an abundance of rainwater, so they don't deplete so easily. So you're allowed to water from these streams. So the one opinion that says that as long as I don't have to worry about this internal item, right? Namely Rabashi. Rashi says the only reason I'm going to make a shama because I'm worried that make a shama are going to become depleted, but otherwise I wouldn't worry about it. So he holds like Rabbi Zera. But the one Rabbi Lov, Rabbi Yochanan, who says that I have to be goes there, even if there's no problem with the make a shama, I have to worry that you're going to take from a well. So he doesn't hold like Rabbi Zera. So Gufa, Rabbi Zera, Rabbi Bar Yimi, Shmuel. What did Rabbi? Let's go back to Rabbi Zera's statement, who says the I have the streams that draw the water from the ponds. I don't have to worry about them. I can use them because it's not that much exertion. So I can use from them in order to prevent a loss, like the irrigated field. So Rabbi Yimi, Rabbi Zera, make a shaman, make kilon. But we worry about even make a shamim, even rainwater. We worry about, not only the make kilo, not only the water from the well, even though there's no exertion. So I'm alay. So Rabbi Zera addressed Rabbi Yirmiyah very paternalistically. He said, Yirmiyah bini, Yirmiyah my son. Hania Gomim de Bavel Kamayat Loposki Domo. I'm talking about the ponds of Bavel. There's so much rain in Bavel. Are you kidding me? So it's if it's like water that never gets depleted. So you don't have to worry about it. It's not even like to make a shower, and the more you draw from it, the more depleted it will be. These will never be depleted. Tana Rabbanim. We learned from the rabbis the psikos of berechos. If you have like these pools that are ditches, Rashi says it's all one thing. Shenismalu mayim erev yontiv, they were filled up with the water on erev yontiv already, so I'm not filling them up on yontiv. Asal hashkos me, I'm not filling them up on kol hamoed. Asal hashkos me and makolo shel moed. You still have to worry about that. Maybe the water's not going to last, and therefore you can't fill up from them on kol hamoed even to water the irrigated fields that need irrigation. But there's a water channel that's constantly passing through it, so that you don't have to worry about the water supply drying up. So then it would be mutter. So I'm a papa who sharuba shoysa so that shoysa miyosa amasamayim. That's if you can water the majority of that field from the amasamayim in one time. So avashi so you're not going to have to keep on going back. So on the same day. So avashi so the shoysa, even if you're not going to be able to water from the majority of the field in one day, it's still going to be okay. Because we're not worried that it's if you would water it several times in one day, so maybe you really would deplete the supply. But here, even if you have to do more watering because you're not going to get the majority of the field at one time, you're going to wait another day or so for it to replenish its supply. Since the water is constantly coming, so you say to yourself, if it doesn't have enough for one day, I'm not going to go back and try to find like a different well or something. I'll come back the next day. Tisha the tray close to Yomi. I'll come back the next day or the following day. Tana Rabbanim Brechash and Otepes Mayim Stebes Shlach and Zu. I have a field. I have like a mountain or a hill where I have two high up fields that require irrigation. One is higher up, one is lower up. The one that's higher up has its own spring that's providing water to it, and then when it provides water to it, that water drips down to a pool to a ditch of pool water which is below, and that ditch of pool water can be used in order to take from there to water the irrigation field that is below. So Brechash and Otepes Mayim is stay based on Shlach and Zu. I have this a pool of rainwater, the pool of water which is receiving water from the field that's being irrigated above, from the spring that is above. So I can use that. I could just drag that water along in order to easily water the base of Shlachim, which is underneath. We did the Pascha, but I don't have to worry that it's going to run out because of the brecha. It's not like a spring. It's not an endless supply of water. It's just a pool of rainwater, pool of water. So I'm Rabbi Yirmiyah, you're a dayanim metaptefis. Now we're talking about you're only allowed to do it if the water is still trickling down from the field which is above. I'm Abaye, and Abaye says it's not just that the water is still trickling down from the field above, but it has to be that the spring that is feeding the field above is still operating. Yishlo pasuk mayan rishon. Tanya, the Bryce says of Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe Yomer, if I have two beds, shtei arugos, I have two beds in the fields that planting the different the types of vegetables, whatever. Shtei arugos zu l'mala mizu lo yidla min hatachtoni v'yashkes el yoina. You're not allowed to draw water from the bottom one in order to water the upper one. Yaisa, because that's considered to be an excessive tircha. Even if it's the same, let's say, flower bed or vegetable bed, and one is half of it is below and half of it is above. You're not allowed to water from the bottom one to the upper one because that's considered to be a tircha yisera. Tana Rabbanan, Madlin liyarakos kadei la'oichem. You are allowed to. Pashtus is that I'm allowed to draw water for the purpose of kadei la'ochlan. For the purpose of ochel nefesh, and I'm going to actually be watering the vegetables to eat the vegetables on Chol HaMoed itself, because excessive exertion, the way Tosfos understands anyway, different understands. Like Rashi Tosfos, we don't have so much time. Even excessive exertion, that's how we paskin, will be permitted if it's for actual ochel nefesh. You're actually going to eat the food on Chol HaMoed. But if it's not to actually eat the food, just to make things nicer for the future, also that's awesome. There was a fellow who was watering his vegetables. I'm like, so I said to Ravina, wow, we have a great opportunity to put something in Chayim. So Amalei, So Ravina said, not so fast. That there's a price that says he's allowed to do this. He's probably just watering his vegetables because he wants to eat them on Chol Hamoed. So Amalei, so Rabbi Tosfos said, that's not what it means. Miso is my madlin maya. It doesn't mean that you're allowed to draw water on Chol Hamoed. No, my madlin means shlufe. It means you're allowed to pull out excess vegetables. When I have like lots of vegetables together, it would be permitted in order to enable the vegetables to continue to be viable, but not that you can actually do watering. It's not, as it says in the Mishnah and Peah, people do this all the time. They pull out excessive, plants and so forth that are going to interfere with the growth of the other plants, even for the portion in the field that's set aside for the aniyim, like the Peah or the Olulos. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Meir, my man says he can do it with his own portion, but not the portion set aside for the poor people. But we see meidel is used to mean that you're uprooting excess plants. So Amalei Tanya, so he said to Ravina replied, no, but we have a price that says explicitly the madlin, when it comes to Hilchos Chol Hamoed, has to do with water, that you're allowed to water. You could draw water for purposes of watering the vegetables in order to eat them on Chol Hamoed. So Amalei. So Rabbi Tosfos said, okay, Tanya, if the price says so I guess, you beat me. So you're not allowed to make the ditches for the vines. My ugios, what are the ugios? The ditches. So Tanya Nami, ugios, the ditan should be kari zaysim, that the ditches that go around the olive trees should be kari gefanim that go around the roots of the vines. If I have Rav Yehuda shower the Bnei Bar Tzisai, the Mevad Binki the Kameon, but Rav Yehuda allowed the Bnei Bar Tzisai, a family, to make the ditches around the vineyard. So we say, Lo Kasha, no, that he allowed, sure, because the ditches had already been made. They just had kind of like gotten filled up a little bit, so he was allowed to redig them. So that's okay. That's Atiki. Habachadati, it's only us, or if they're new ditches, you're making new ditches, that's a Tircha Yisera. Habatiki, but if it's an old ditch, so then that would be okay on Chol Hamoed. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said that you're not allowed to dig a new irrigation canal on either Chol Hamoed or the Shemitah year. You're not allowed to do it. And the Chachamim disagreed with it. Chachamim disagreed. So Bishlam Hamoed. So I understand you can't do a Chol Hamoed because we said Chol Hamoed. What is it? You can't do Chol Hamoed. Tircha. You're not allowed to excessive exertion. But Shemitah year, if something has a need for it, otherwise be a hefsed, it's not usher. So we don't care about exertion on the Shemitah year. Shvius, my timer. So please, Rabbi Zeh, Rabbi Yabba, but Mama, what the reason is. Chanama one says, one says it looks like you're hoeing for the sake of the crops by building an irrigation ditch. The other one says because you're going to take the dirt and the dirt's going to go on the banks of the ditch, and therefore it's going to look like you're sowing, like you're preparing the bank of the ditch, the bank of the canal for sowing purposes. So my binayo, what would be a case that would be a nafkamina between the two of them, what's permitted or not? If the irrigation canal immediately filled up with water, well, that's obviously not hoeing. But the dirt's going to go on the bank of the canal, so that's still going to be a problem if you say that's the issue. But if you say the problem is that it looks like you're hoeing is that not if you're going to be swamped with water afterwards, so then you wouldn't have a problem. But wait a second. Even according to the opinion says I have to worry that it looks like you're hoeing. Still be worried about the fact that you're putting some of the dirt on the banks of the canal, and therefore it's going to be good for Zriya. Ella, a different nafkamina. Elika benayo, the case of the nafkamina will be you take some of the earth and you throw it far away. According to the opinion, says I have to worry that I'm taking the dirt, I'm putting it on the banks of the canal. I don't have to worry that I'm preparing the banks of the canal for Zriya. I threw the dirt and the dirt dissipated amongst a large section. So there's not enough dirt in any one place that it's preparing anything for Zriya. The one who says that it still looks like I'm hoeing the area of the trench itself, so that problem I still have. But according to the opinion that says let's go the other way around, who says that normally I have to worry that if the dirt goes on the bank, it looks like I'm preparing it for Zriya. Now I threw it far away, I don't have to worry about that. But still, when you're digging the trench itself, it looks like you're hoeing. He says, in my opinion, it doesn't look like oider. When you're hoeing, you're just softening the ground, so you're not going to throw the dirt away. You're going to hoe the area, and then you're going to put the dirt back, and you're going to soften the area with the dirt. But here, since you're throwing the dirt away, it doesn't look like oider. So Meimah gave the reason, and he gave the reason. He had a version. This is what the Tana said. Nation that Rabbi Elazar and Isaiah said explicitly that you can't dig a new irrigation canal, because it looks like you're hoeing. The Kashle, Rabbi Elazar and Isaiah, but it's a contradiction then with something else that Rabbi Elazar and Isaiah said. Rabbi Elazar and Isaiah, since when does he say that anything that looks like you're hoeing is usher? Then you should never be allowed to plow anything. But we see that he does allow plowing. We have a shita that says it's a mishnah in Masechah Shvius that you're allowed to place all of the dung, like your animal dung, into a stockpile on the Shemitah year, because it's clear that you're not doing it for planting purposes. You're just kind of gathering the fertilizer together in one place. Rabbi Meir says no. In order, you have to demonstrate that it's in a separate place and not the field itself. You got to either dig it down 3 tefachim, or you got to put it on a higher surface than the field 3 tefachim. If you already had some fertilizer in place, so then you'll be allowed to add to it according to him. That he's makel about. Most people love a holy. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah is he says no. Even if you already had a little bit of zevel before the Shemitah year, you can't add on to it. You always have to dig 3 tefachim, or it has to be 3 tefachim high, or you put it on a boulder like a high rock. So so he doesn't have a problem, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, with you being mamik shlosha. Even though when you're mamik shlosha, you're going to be digging in, and it looks like you're hoeing. So why isn't he worried about hoeing? About near there. So Rabbi Zera, Rabbi Abba Bamamo give an answer as to why it's not a contradiction. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. One says that we're talking about a case where it was already. It had already been dug before the Shemitah year. Shehemik means that it had already taken place before the Shemitah year, so it doesn't look like he's hoeing during the Shemitah year. The other one says that even though in this case he is digging, nonetheless, the fact that he's placing all this fertilizer over there, it shows that it wasn't for hoeing purposes. We said that you're allowed to fix an irrigation canal that got messed up on Chol Hamoed. So my mekukelis, what does it mean that it's mekukelis, a damaged irrigation canal? So I'm Rabbi Abba, that an irrigation canal is normally 1 amma deep. So this was 1 amma 6 tefachim. So it was 1 amma deep, and now it kind of like got clogged up, and it's only 1 tefach deep, right? And therefore you dig another 5 tefachim. So pshita chasi tefach ashosh tefachim. If you had the same ratio and you're only going to go 3 tefachim deep, there's no point, because it's not going to have enough of the room for water to pass. So therefore, that's just a wasted activity. So therefore, that doesn't count for anything. And that's just a waste of time. So that we shouldn't permit that altogether. So therefore, it's a tircha d'lo tzarich, says Rashi. If it was 12 tefachim deep and now it's 2 tefachim deep, and you have to dig out to another 10 tefachim, that's the chatarach tircha yiseva. Low, that we're not going to allow, because digging 10 tefachim is too much of a tircha. What if it was originally 7 tefachim deep, now it's only 2 tefachim deep, and I have to now dig another 5 tefachim? So I'm going, instead of from 1 to 6, I'm going from 2 to 7 tefachim. So I allowed 1 to 6. Maybe I should allow 2 to 7 too. In the case of 1 to 6, I allow, and here from 2 to 7, I should allow it. Oh, Dilmo, maybe no. Since I'm going 1 tefach further, maybe it's too much tircha. I leave it as a teku. Shulchan Aruch paskins mutter. Why? That's what the Rambam says. The Rambam holds in general meleches kol hamoed is only midrabanan, like Rabbeinu Tam. So therefore, whenever there's a shaila and abayit lo ifshitza, I go l'kula. So the Shulchan Aruch paskins l'kula. Mishabur points out not everyone holds that way, because some hold the meleches kol hamoed is deraisa. You go l'chuma. Abayit shalom neimar hamdach l'shkufei nara. Abaye allowed the people of the children, the family of Barmadach, to clean out a river from some branches that fell in. Rabbi Yirmi Yashavu the Sachusa the Michra Nara Tamima, and Rabbi Yirmi allowed the family of Sachusa to do what? To dig away a source of a river that had become clogged up. Ravashi Shavu the Masamaxia Latuche Nara Bornitz. Ravashi allowed the people of Masamoxia to clear away a sandbank from the middle of the river. He explained that since there's a public need to have access to the water, it's not and you're allowed to take care of a public need.
Let's guess, let's guess.